One of the most anticipated national football shows of the year. Big Sills. Absolutely. Has to be one of the most anticipated shows that we're going to do today. You know, I was just telling Tone, everyone's assuming that they're going to move out of 30, the Eagles. I think it's all predicated on what they do at 10 or who they get at 10. I think that 10th pick dictates the 30th pick and what they'll do. Move out, maybe move up from 30. When you have multiple picks in the first round and you have a lottery pick, you basically have a golden ticket. Do you understand? Of the 32 NFL teams, there's only 10 teams that have the golden ticket. You have a top 10 opportunity to get, as I said yesterday, an impact player. Make it an impact move. Do something where it's an impactful move. By the way, I know there's been talk on Jalen Carter. I've been telling you he's this dude for 3 weeks. He's Jerome Brown. Would I have a problem instead of Bijan for Jalen Carter? Absolutely not. You really want to go out and make a move, you move up to 3 like Merrill suggested yesterday. Will Anderson, another grand slam. Get an impactful football player. Not some dude who's the 7th ranked corner or the 30th ranked player on the board. There's not 30 players in this draft that are impact players. Why in the world would you draft a guy who's not an impact player to an impact team? Dumbest stuff you hear. You hear that dumb shit every day. Let me get Nolan Smith. Why? Dude, if you're going to get Nolan Smith, move up to 3. Seriously, if you're thinking about Nolan Smith at 10, go get the best guy on the planet. Here, let me ask you this in your own place of hiring. If you knew you had an opportunity to get the best available candidate for your company, wouldn't you go get him? Or would you sit and hire the 3rd best guy in the room? Apply your own life. Makes 0 sense. Makes 0 sense. I hear people are like, well, Sills, you really think the organization is thinking about Bijan? You know why you think of Bijan Robinson at 10? Because he's the best player in the draft. He's the best player. Wait, here. Let me go get Nolan Smith at 10 and pass on the best player in the draft. Well, that's not really a giant need position. Yes, it is. Your guys in the backfield are dudes, and you know it. You stroke those guys like those guys are Brian Westbrook. They're not Brian Westbrook. They're not even Miles Sanders. Give me a break. There's 13 guys in this draft that are worth a shit that I would consider impact. And here they are. C.J. Stroud at 13. Okay, I'm going to put him there. You know what's funny? I was watching Greg Cosell do one of the most insane reviews of C.J. Stroud, and guess what he was doing? He was playing against Michigan State. Not one guy in that secondary at Michigan State will be drafted in the first 2 or 3 rounds. And those windows were so wide open. You know what he said? Here's a pro passing play. Here's an NFL pass. Here's an NFL pass. You know why quarterbacks from Ohio State struggle? Because those windows are so open and you're playing against turds. That pass ain't open in the SEC. That pass is not open in the SEC. It's open at Iowa. It's open at Northwestern. It's not open at Georgia, LSU, A&M, South Carolina. It's not open in those games. You're comparing a guy throwing a football against a Michigan State team that sucked last year, and you're trying to convince me that that was a pro pass? It's 9-on-7 versus shitty opponents and lesser talent than when you look at the Southeastern Conference. I mean, I heard a guy who really evaluates players. It was the stupidest evaluation of all time. You know what I do? I look at the players these guys play against. Who are these guys? Why is he so wide open? Is there any talent on the other side? The answer is no. Over-evaluation. Shit, dude. No wonder Cardale Jones looked superstarish when he was at Ohio State, or Dwayne Haskins looked superstarish. Those windows are wide open. Those guys don't complete those passes when you're down in the Southeastern Conference. Not close. It's a fraudulent evaluation. I still think the kid is good. And I happen to think the people behind him are okay. By the way, one more thing on Nolan Smith. He has no production. Look at his statistics. 0 production. 0. Like the guy the Eagles drafted last year. Great athlete. No production. What do you want? A productive athlete? Or a lesser talented player but makes plays? Or do you want a guy who looks good in the gym? The Eagles would hire 2 guys who look good in the gym and on a track field. How about being a football player, dude? Be productive. You got to be productive, guy. I got Will Levis here at number 12. The value of the quarterback position. He's probably got the better arm. I don't have any Anthony Richardson at all. These are my best 13 players. I think the kid from Kentucky struggles from one thing: lack of talent. You think Kentucky has the same talent that Georgia does or Alabama? No. So his production is going to be like Josh Allen. It's going to go up and down every game and every week. They don't have depth like Georgia, A&M, or LSU. They don't have that kind of depth at a program like Kentucky. Kentucky's a hoop school. It's not a football school. He transferred from a football program to a hoop school. You think they're going to have talented players at Kentucky every year? Absolutely not. So just like Josh Allen, who had a better junior year, there's going to be lesser talent with injuries. And they had a lot of injuries at Kentucky. So I take that into account. He got killed last year. You know, the one thing you say about the quarterback from Kentucky, he's tough as nails. He took a beating last year. And I'm a fan of that. He took a beating. You have to have courage in the pocket. One thing Baker Mayfield never had was courage in the pocket. The quarterback from Kentucky has courage in the pocket. He's got a good arm, and he can play. Number 11, these are the top 13 players that I have because I don't think there's anything past 13. Jackson Smith-Njigba, Ohio State wide receiver. I think he's the best wide receiver on the board. I think the rest of them, I'm not drafting a wide receiver from TCU. Not happening. Not happening. They do not produce skilled players. They produce players that are overhyped and overrated in an overrated and overhyped conference, the Big 12. I mean, think about it. It's the worst defensive Power 5 conference in the country. You're going to sign a wide receiver that goes against the worst talent in the country Power 5-wise and feel comfortable with that. I just got through telling you about the Big 10 not having the greatest teams. The worst defense by a Power 5 conference is Big 12. So you're going to sign a wide receiver from TCU or any of those other places? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. CeeDee Lamb's a good ball player, but he ain't A.J. Brown. The Cowboys make you think he is, but he's not. CeeDee Lamb's a good ball player, but he ain't one of those elite guys. Okay, he's not one of those elite dudes. Number 10, Broderick Jones, Georgia, offensive tackle. Again, he's in the sandbox with the rest of those guys. It's a pretty good group of guys at the OT position. Number 9, I got Devon Witherspoon. Illinois, one of my favorite players in the draft. Makes some false steps. Hell of a hitter. Reminds me a lot of Bob Sanders. Again, speed, I would question a tad. But I like the ball player. I think he's got moxie. Peter Skronowski, I didn't know that he had a family member that won 5 championships with the Lombardi Packers back in the day. It's either his grandfather or his father played for Lombardi on the other side of Forrest Gregg. So obviously he's had the bloodlines, and I love the fact that he grew up around the football game. And his family grew up around it. I love that. I love players that grew up in a football environment since the time they were small. Now, he didn't start playing ball until he was in the 6th grade, which is a little bit late, but still, he's had football in his family. His grandpa, thank you, Neil, his grandpa played for the Lombardi Packers and won 5 titles. So he grew up in it. He grew up in an athletic environment. I love that because that means this, what? Competing. I got Bryce Young at 7. I think he's the best quarterback in the draft. And quite frankly, I think he's the second best offensive skilled player in the draft. He's a heck of a football player. And you know what's getting in the way of his success? You looking at the body and not looking at the body of work that he's put together. Bryce Young has put together a body of work that's greater than Joe Burrow did. His body of work is better than Joe Burrow in what he's done in college. The only thing that's different is his body. I've got to go with the body of work. Because in other words, you'd be telling me this. Hey, Sills, draft Jordan Davis. Even though he's the bigger athlete and the faster athlete, and don't take Jalen Carter because Jalen Carter's the more productive guy. You got to take production over body. And I'll say this to you. So what? Bryce Young lasts 5 years and gets a devastating injury and he doesn't last 10 years. If he delivers you a Super Bowl, what do you care? If he only plays 6 years and delivers you a Super Bowl and blows his knee out, was it worth it? Would it be worth it? Yeah. Yeah. Number 6, Christian Gonzalez. Transfer from Colorado to Oregon. Had a great conversation with Mario Cristobal last night about him. He said, look, we were looking at him. He's a fabulous talent. He's got great feet, separation, and he's a lot like, get this. So here's somebody to look at. He's got Darrelle Revis in him. And Darrelle Revis had a technique. What did he do? He mugged you down the sidelines. Now, you're not able to do that as much in today's NFL because they frown on that. But you know the one thing he does? He's one of those guys that uses the sideline as a defender, and by the end of the route, the guy's out of bounds or close to having no room to have the pass completed to him. He's got great field awareness. He's a pretty good football player. So I've moved him up a bit. And I got Christian Gonzalez at 6. These are the 13 best players, in my opinion, in my view. We're also going to look at the draft. And again, where the Eagles sit at 10, you don't know what you're doing. You have kind of a litter of players that you're going to choose from. But you don't know where you're going yet until you see what the quarterbacks are going to do. See, the quarterbacks are going to dictate the entire draft. I think Arizona's also, and I think Houston Could also flip the draft upside down a little bit. Here's your top 5. Paris Johnson is a better player than Skrzyňski. He's a better player. He's a more versatile player. He's big as hell, great feet, play him inside or outside, and he is a perfect Jeff Stoutland guy. I would not be upset if that guy was taken by the Eagles. He's large, he's enormous, he's got great awareness, he's an earth mover, and he fits right into that offensive line that the Eagles have constructed. You're talking about another 6'5" guy. That's, again, it's more of a safe pick, but it's a pick that has relevance. Why? There's an open position at right guard right now. And you could slug him in, and in my opinion, he would be in the Pro Bowl. You got 2 opportunities to draft Pro Bowl players here. Number 4, Tyree Wilson. Some health issues. However, as I tell you about the Big 12 not being a very good defensive conference, it's the worst Power 5 conference in the NFL, in college football. He still gets multiple reps and game reps. Remember this. He gets multiple game reps because that conference throws the ball 50 times a game. You get 50 opportunities at pass rushing, and you get quality reps to improve your craft. And he's productive. He's productive. He's got multiple moves. He's got 2-3 moves. He's good on a second move. He's rangy. He's a long kid, man. He really is. He's got great length to him. He engages the run well. He does a lot of good things. You know, the one area that I would look at Tyree Wilson where I think he's got issues is keeping people off his knees. Okay? He's got to bend over a little more. If that were me, okay, and I was his D-line coach, squat down more, kid. Get down there, man. You can't overpower. You're not going to be able to overpower offensive tackles in the National Football Leagues or guards playing as high as you do. He plays a little high, and he doesn't really protect his knees and his ankles as much. He's got to get down lower, man. You got to be kind of like a little freak out there. You got to be kind of like a Javon Curse. He's got capabilities of being a Javon Curse. You could stand this guy up, though. So, again, just a little issue with Tyree Wilson in protecting his knees and getting lower in the crotch. Would you trade 10 and 30 for Carter or Will Anderson? Let me get to that, Carson. Let me finish the top 13 players, and I'll address that. Jalen Carter's the 3rd best player in the draft. You can make the argument, if you said Sills, he's the best player in the draft. Okay. There's 3 quality guys. There's 3 superstars. Carter, Anderson, and Bijan Robinson. Those are your 3 best players. Those are your 3 best impact players. And if you drafted any one of those guys number 1, see, here, watch this. Bijan Robinson, Will Anderson, Jalen Carter belong in this sandbox, and everybody else belongs. I would say 6 through 15 belong in the second sandbox. The rest of the first round, the third. And then after that, you can do whatever you want. Best player available, I don't care. You're going to be able to go to best player available quicker in this draft than you have in any other draft. I will say this to you. I think this draft here doesn't have a lot of talent in it, but it's going to be the most compelling draft maybe I've covered in 20 years. And I've covered drafts and been to draft. I've done everything. I've been in draft rooms. I've been in the Raider draft room. I've been in the Cowboy draft room. I've been in the Cleveland Browns draft room, day of the draft. I've been in the Dolphins draft room. I've been in all these draft rooms. This is probably the most compelling because you know why? There's not a consensus on who they think are the top 3 players. It's a group of dudes. I got Anderson at number 2. If you said, listen to me, if you said Sills, he's the best player in the draft. Okay. All right. I think it's razor thin. Edge rusher at 2. And number 1, the best player in this draft is Bijan Robinson. He's the best. He's LaDainian Tomlinson. I'm going to give you some comparisons to these 13 players. Okay? Bijan Robinson, LaDainian. Will Anderson, Cornelius Bennett. Jalen Carter, Jerome Brown. Tyree Wilson, probably a Javon Curse. Paris Johnson, Landon Dickerson. I think he could be a Landon Dickerson. Type. Gonzalez, a cheap man's version of Darrelle Revis. Not as good. I don't think he has that high a ceiling. Bryce Young, Drew Brees. Maybe more so a smaller Patrick Mahomes. He's more like that, a Patrick Mahomes. That's how I would look at that. There's 13 dudes. And so when you start talking to me about non-impactful players at 10, okay? And for the record, sure, we mentioned it yesterday, the depth at corner. Dude, I'll go into 2, and I'll go in the 3rd round to get my depth. I'm not wasting another year of draft picks of guys sitting on the bench. The Eagles' entire draft last year, with some play from Jordan Davis, made 0 impact on your football team a year ago. 0, not even in special teams. Okay? Quan, Bijan Robinson, Edgerrin James. Well, Edgerrin James is a Hall of Famer. He's a Hall of Fame player. Got an impactful position. And you know what? I hear people go like this. Well, the Eagles don't value the running back position, but yet they value the running game. Put that in your thought process. This is not what they do. This is not what they do. It is exactly what they do. The Eagles start with the run game. When anyone tells you the Eagles don't value the run game, that's crazy. And they have been able to be cheap at that position for a long time. And when it matters the most in critical games against Kansas City, your running back was gone. Where was Miles Sanders in the Super Bowl in the 4th quarter? I mean, you could have put that guy's face on a milk carton. You could have put that guy. And can you imagine Jalen Hurts and Bijan Robinson in control of the Eagle run game? And AJ and Devontae and Dallas Goedert. And by the way, this guy's an amazing pass catcher. He would improve a shitty screen game that you don't have. So wait a minute, let me get this right. He would improve your passing game. He would make those windows open for your wideouts more. Just listen to this. Just listen to where I'm going with you here. So he would take some of the carries away from Jalen, not production. He would make he would impact the wideouts in their windows that would be open. He would improve your screen game, and he would improve your run game. We're not talking about drafting a running back. We're talking about drafting a dual threat running back. Why not put a dual threat running back with a dual threat quarterback? How does that not make sense? You would have 2 dual threat players in the backfield. wouldn't know how could you cut? You don't have the defensive personnel on the NFC side of the NFL to cover all those players in Philadelphia. Kenneth Gainwell on a game plan and Boston don't do shit for me. I'm not concerned about them dudes. I'm concerned more about your old line. You put BJ behind them, I'm concerned about the run game even more so. And everything will be created off that run game. And you accentuate the run game. And it would help your passing game. And it would help your quarterback continue. What helps Jalen Hurts out more? Another wideout? Or a back that makes those windows wider and bigger and more open? How are you not seeing this? You're clouded in your judgment on the running back position is narrow-minded thinking. This player affords you more ability, okay, to expand other areas of your offense and make you more of a threat. I don't know if he's going to be there at 10. Because the more you talk to people, the more people are going, I think he's the best player in the draft. So let me get this right. You would draft Nolan Smith at 10 and pass on the best player in the draft, knowing full well what I just said, he would help every area. Bijan Robinson helps every area of your offense. Every area of your offense. Does Paris Johnson? Probably too. Eagles put a huge value on the O-line. I'm not saying he doesn't. Like I said to you guys, if it's not Paris Johnson, B.J. Robinson, Will Anderson, or Jalen Carter, the rest of those dudes are just going to be dudes. I'd trade the hell down, and I would get as many picks as I can, and I would hope I'd landed on somebody who could turn out to be somebody you find in a ladder round, like a Jason Kelce, and then turns into a superstar player. And I would pray on, if I don't get one of those four, I would want to get as many picks as I can, hoping that I would land on somebody who would be a star. Because as I've showed you, your history of drafting, it's been better as of late. But your history of drafting edge rushers sucks. Your history of drafting DB suck. You make it sound like if you draft an edge rusher, look at the edge rushers they've drafted over the years in the first round. They've all blown except for Brandon Graham. Josh Sweat was a fourth rounder. He wasn't a first rounder. That was best player available. You make it sound like they draft edge rushers like they're gifted at isolating and identifying the college draft guys. No, they're not. They can't pick a linebacker to save their life. Their entire secondary, including the corners, are not homegrown. They're bought. Your top edge rusher is bought. So don't make it sound going into tonight's draft that these guys are savants at it. It's gotten better. 17 of the 22. It's gotten better. But your premium positions on defense are bought. So if you've got limited picks, doesn't it make sense? It's got to be an impact guy. It's got to be an impact dude. Make it impactful. You're never going to be in the 10 hole here. I don't believe hey, I'm going to take back what I said. What was it, on the 13th of last month? You guys are in the pool in the little kitty box of being in the NFC opportunity to get to the Super Bowl again. Absolutely. Howie's done a marvelous job. This has been a great offseason for him. And there's two more moves, okay? The draft and June 1. I think Howie's going to make an impactful move in June 1 when players are cut. He did last year. He found Gardner Johnson 9 days before the start of the season, scouring the rosters, looking for players. Even the Saints didn't even know what they had. He's great at that. He's still got two more moves. Remember, $20 million in cap space? Okay? Top 5 players. Could use a linebacker. Drew, I don't want to draft one of these guys. I'll UDFA them. Unrestricted free agents. I'll sign a bunch of them, bring them into camp. But I'm going to go looking at some of the rosters in the NFL because I don't think it's a deep pool. I don't want to waste my draft capital knowing full well there's really Campbell and a bunch of other dudes, like 3 other guys. Okay? So let Howie, I feel more comfortable with Howie going on a roster in Seattle, finding a linebacker that you have on a practice squad. I'd rather sign a practice squad linebacker right now than I would draft a linebacker out of this group. Look at the moves Howie made. He knows the linebacking core is what? Weak. Got the kid from Chicago. By the way, the kid Morrow, after the 3rd round, it's probably better than anything you could draft. Smart move. The D tackle they got from New Orleans. Okay, guess what? It's not a very deep pool of DTs after the 2nd round. Good move there. He knows there's nothing in it. He's scouring the rosters. He's great at that. There's no doubt about that. There's no denying that. Okay? Yeah, Bijan, Will Anderson, Jalen Carter, Paris Johnson, Tyree Wilson. Tyree Wilson, again, the only problem I have with Tyree Wilson, I don't think he protects his knees. I don't think he bends over and squats over as well, and that's why you see some injuries with him and lower extremity issues that he has because he can't keep guys off his knees. NFL, it's a technique league. You're going to have to play better, son. You're going to have to play better. Okay? He's a good football player, but when you get to the NFL, these guys are technicians with power and speed. The biggest thing that you have to understand when you get to the NFL, you can't overpower people. Everyone's strong. Everyone's enormous. Everyone. But not everybody is a technician. Remember when we had Stink on? Stink's talking to you about how he prepared for a play, let alone a game, a play. He went on a 15-minute diatribe about one play, timing, knowing what the quarterback does going in his 7-step. Where is he in the pocket? All that. One play. He was breaking down for you. That's what's the difference between the college game and the pro game. Everything is about technique and execution. You know, that's why offensive guys, you know why it takes longer for offensive guys to develop more so than defensive guys? Think about this. 11 guys have to get their technique and their play down to a T. Jason Kelsey has to take a flat step so that the linebacker can't come in, so he can slip and scoop. You got the guy, Lane Johnson, getting out to the outside, making sure that the defensive end doesn't set the edge. You got your backside guard, Landon Dickerson, coming across, taking a flat step, making sure nobody gets down in the middle in there, and you got Mulata giving him a false read. And then you got everybody has to make a play on offense. Everyone has to do their job. On defense, 10 guys could screw up. One guy get in the backfield, make a play, play's over. That's why you see defensive football players early on making a bigger impact than you do offensive players because it takes time. Running backs, you know why some running backs don't get on the field? Because some running backs can't pick up blitz packages. So they keep him on the bench. One of the things Rashad Penny couldn't get on the field in Seattle, not just the fact that he couldn't see the field because he was always injured, he was terrible as a pass protector. That's why Chris Carson started over him. He was more productive, and he was smarter in the pass game. He was able to pick up the pass protection. Pass protection's a key in this thing, too. If you're a young running back, dude, the number one thing you got to work on is catching the football and making sure you know who you're picking up because these defensive coordinators nowadays, they're going to bring the house at you, and they're going to test and see if you know what you're doing. Bill Belichick told me something years ago when he was down with Jimmy Johnson. Do you know who he attacks in football games? The guy with the least knowledge. And he'll attack free agents and rookies. You know why? Because his belief is this. Most of the time, those guys don't know their assignments yet or what's expected of them in that particular scheme. That's why you see most of the time the better free agent year you get is the second year because he kind of knows what's going on in the scheme. When he first shows up, he barely knows what he's doing. But when the second year, you kind of know what your responsibilities are and your techniques are. That's why guys have better second years when they get into a particular team when they're coming over in free agency. Okay? So again, this whole draft is going to come. By the way, Keith Byers is going to join us at 4:30. He is the last running back ever drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles in the first round. And by the way, he was the 10th pick. How appropriate to have Keith Byers on talking about impacts of a running back. 4:30. Now, the key to this draft for the Eagles is obviously that 10th pick. Because in my opinion, the 10th pick dictates what you do at the 30th pick. People keep saying, well, they'll trade out of the 30th. Not if they trade down from 10. How do you know that? They may trade that pick. Mike Hawk, AJ Hawk's brother, a solid linebacker we can take. I'll wait for him to be a free agent. Again, I'll say this to you. Whether he's a 6th or 7th rounder or a free agent, there's no difference. They're in the same sandbox. You name me. When you said he's AJ Hawk's brother, I immediately went, nah, it's all right. I'll get another guy free agent. Because you're looking at the back of the jersey instead of the player and his production. Pretty good player. There's going to be a ton of pretty good players that are going to be unrestricted free agents when the draft is said and done, like you did with TJ Edwards. TJ Edwards was a UDFA, undrafted free agent. Now he's making $7.5 million. They didn't waste any draft capital on him. That's what I want to do again. This is not a deep pool of linebackers, so I'm going to go and get a guy with a UDFA. I don't care. I'm not wasting a draft pick because I have limited. I've got to try to fill holes with 6 picks, maybe more if they trade the 30th. Okay? Maybe more. All right. The key is this. I wrote the list down of all 31 teams that are picking. And we did this exercise before. And now, as we're here on draft day, we need to look at it here because Carolina. Now, let me say this to you. I've heard Carolina's also. They were also a week ago in the process of thinking about trading for Lamar Jackson. And I talked to Frank about it. Frank said they explored everything. He said the draft capital's too much, and I really like a guy. Now, he wouldn't tell me which one that he likes. People are throwing Will Levis out there or Will Levis. Get this. Agents are going to be throwing this information out, and so are general managers because they're trying to take you off the scent of what they really want to do. Could Carolina put an edge rusher there at 1 on the other side of Brian Burns? No, I do not believe that. I think they're taking a quarterback. Okay? I think they'll take the quarterback. They have been a headless organization since Cam Newton fell apart. They need to get a quarterback in the building. Frank needs a quarterback. They need a quarterback. I'm going to show you something that is has tentacles back to the Philadelphia Eagles. Watch this. Look at what your guys have done. Look at what people that have worked in the Eagle organization have done. Andrew Berry, former Eagle executive. What did he do? He got his quarterback, Deshaun Watson. Joe Douglas, former Eagle executive. What did he do? He got his quarterback, Aaron Rodgers. Howie just signed his quarterback to a $255 million deal. These guys know it all starts there. Those general managers who worked at the NovaCare Center know it starts there. Where did Frank Reich have the most success? Okay? Philly. He knows it starts there at the quarterback position. That's why, in my opinion, Carolina didn't move up to take an edge rusher at 1. Anyone who says that they're going to take Will Anderson at 1, they're dumb. Why would you move? Now, look, he's a great player. I get it. But he doesn't win you the NFC South, which is there for the taking now. Do we not agree? Derek Carr? Okay. Then what? Baker Mayfield? Houston's intriguing here. The McNair family, in my opinion, you think taking CJ Stroud is something that they would be in line for? No way. I think they take the Kentucky quarterback here with the second pick. And I think you can maybe play into why. I think they take Will Levis here at number 2. And I get where people would go. Houston would take Will Anderson. It's not a bad thought. It's not a bad thought. By the way, they have 12 draft choices too. Okay, so they can make moves. Would Houston be in? Hey, I got a feeling that Lamar Jackson's name is going to be brought up a lot tonight. I think his name's going to be brought up a lot. Okay? I do. Would Houston, with all the assets that they got from Cleveland, would they send him over to Baltimore for Lamar Jackson? Could be there. March 26. We're not talking 36. They got the draft capital. Okay? Maurice goes, Sills, this draft is overrated, loaded with overrated quarterbacks. Overhyped, overdrafted, overevaluated, all of it. I think it's a shitty group of guys. Hey, I never said they were good. I said this is where these guys are going to try to make chicken shit into chicken soup. Oh, I completely agree. I think these quarterbacks outside of Bryce Young, I think they're bums. Anthony Richardson with a 51 completion percentage in the Southeastern Conference, you think that improves in the NFL? Really? You do? I don't. That was like telling me when Sam Darnold was a turnover machine at Southern Cal, I went, those too many turnovers in the Pac-12. You think that's going to improve in the AFC East? It didn't. You are what you are, dude. That guy will never be able to hit the broadside of a barn. He's a bigger version of Justin Fields. And whatever you think of Justin Fields, if you think Justin Fields is a franchise quarterback, more power to you. I don't. I think he's kind of that kind of guy. And he won less games. Well, because Field was in a lesser conference. I look at Anthony Richardson and go, you know what, though? I'll tell you this about Anthony Richardson here in a second here. Arizona, interesting. Dude, you better have a ton of draft choices to give me for me to move off of Will Anderson. Now, if I'm Howie, I think you call your boy Jonathan Gannon up and you go, I'll give you 10 and 30 for that guy. I'm not giving you any more. I'll give you 10 and 30. If you want to throw Buda Baker in, let's do it. I don't know. Does that sound like a fair trade? Here's 10 and 30 for the third pick and Buda Baker. Would you do it? You get Buda Baker and the third pick, and you give the 10th and 30th up. Would you do it? Put Buda in your secondary, you put a position player back there, and you get Will Anderson as your edge rusher at 6'4.5". Man. Dude. Okay? I mean, you think your defense has improved? Shit, you may have a better defense than last year. I think Rosenhaus has made it known that Carter wants Philadelphia. He does. Hey, Tone, can you put Arthur's super chat up? I didn't read all of it. If you could for me there. I think Rosenhaus has made it known Carter wants Philly. Yes. He looks up to Davis, and his interview with Clark all but predicted. Agree, Sills? I think Davis has a lot to do with it, Arthur, but I think Tracy Rocker has more to do with it. Why? Because he recruited him. Tracy Rocker knows that man's mom and dad. He had to go into his home and recruit him. He had to go in there and know. He coached him. He knows all nuances. So when a player says he wants to play in Philly, yeah, you want to play with your boys, but you want to play for a coach that's got your back. And playing for Tracy Rocker is probably more of the significant part of this. And the fact that the Eagles, funny how the Eagles work, huh? They work kind of like cloak and dagger a little bit. They interviewed the defense coordinator before they hired Sean Desai. Khalid, is Bijan Robinson good at pass protection? Good call and a good take. I wouldn't say overly exceptional. I would say that would have to improve. Okay? I would say that has to improve. See, the problem that you have with Bijan, people go like this, well, he's at Texas. Texas has, by far, next to Notre Dame, the most overrated roster in college football history. I've never seen more five-star guys on a roster in Austin that can't do shit, haven't performed, and they're all in the same boat of Arch Manning. It's all about the name on the back of the jersey, okay? Some of those guys are so overhyped. And Bijan played on a team that's overrated and overhyped, in my opinion. Texas is overrated and overhyped. Big Sil's predicting Carter to Philly now. Here's what I said. I want Bijan. Arthur, if you get Carter, remember I'm telling you, he's Jerome. You trade up for Anderson. And by the way, Arthur, for me, again, it's about what we're going to talk about here and what we're talking about now. What's being laid out in front of Howie right now? Howie is a slave to how this is going to fall in his lap. When he gets to 9, he's going to, when he gets to 8, he's probably going to have actually, I would say this. Once the draft picks fall, at 3, he'll have a decision to make. Do we move up to get Anderson? Okay? Do we move up there? And if everybody's in consensus, he may. Because he knows there's one of the chips that can make our football team better. And he's a wild guy. And if he passes, Anderson's done. Then he goes down to Indy. Indy's taking a quarterback. I believe they're going to take Anthony Richardson. Fits Shane Steichen perfectly. I think everything Richardson has as an arsenal of tools is everything that I think that head coach wants to try to grow. Here's the problem with Anthony Richardson. He makes mistakes. He has turnovers. Jalen Hurts, you know what you can't duplicate on Jalen Hurts and that RPO guy? How smart he is and how quick he makes decisions. Anthony Richardson has all the assets and all the physical tools Jalen Hurts has. But the question mark will be, can he, on the run, on the fly, can he develop the same way that Jalen Hurts is developing as a quarterback in the league running an RPO? That I really doubt. That I haven't seen anybody but Jalen Hurts do this, including Lamar Jackson. Jalen Hurts is coming along as a passer. He's getting better and better. That's not the strength of his game. His decision-making and his pinpoint decision-making on RPO is what's really paying him and really benefiting him. Again, he's done something that no quarterback has done ever that I've ever seen. He's taken progression reading out of the building. RPO, linebacker, tight end. Those guys are wide open. It's not important to progression read. It's important to make the right decision. Okay? That's why he's getting paid that money, because he's a one of. And I'm coming around to it. Okay? I think Indy needs a corner. They're not going there. They need a quarterback. Why would you take a cornerback here at 4 when you've got a massive need and you're probably going to take something that the coach needs, which is a quarterback? I don't even know who's in the building there right now in Indianapolis. They need to get the QB right. They haven't got it right since Andrew Luck. Well, Phillip Rivers was right. Here's a team here in Seattle that probably will take Jalen Carter off the board. Why? Well, Pete Carroll's a defensive-minded guy. He knows what this player is. Like I said, you could flip a – remember, here's one of the impact guys. So what is Seattle going to do? Take a lesser player at safety, or going to take the most impactful guy that could help his defense win games and win the NFC West? Got to think like that. What do I have to do in the NFC West? What does Seattle have to do in the NFC West? You have to stop San Francisco's run game. What's the better way to stop your run game? Okay? You got to stop San Francisco's run game. You got one quality defensive tackle that you got in free agency. Now you put the other guy next to him? I don't know. You're on your way. Look at what San Francisco did. They overpaid for Javon Hargrave. Well, Seattle's got to look at that. Do you think the Eagles will draft Watkins' replacement, or will they get a receiver later down the offseason? I think you probably draft a guy because it's cheaper. Dude, wide receivers are dime a dozen guys now. Okay, I believe they're dime a dozen. All right, I do. I believe they're dime a dozen, man. I think you can get any one of them dudes, and the guy would be productive for you, depending on what the quarterback and the play system is. And for the record, you guys want to replace Quez Watkins? Well, you better get a faster guy in there then, because the one thing that at least Quez does, he makes defensive coordinators think about that 4.2 speed of his. You guys want to get a guy who has 15, 25 catches. I could care less about 15 or 25 catches that are non-important to my passing offense. I care that coordinators have to – look here. So when you're on the field and there's a guy over there who is like slow as molasses, and this guy's over there and he gets 5 catches, great. Who cares? What about the guy when you light him up wide and he's going down the field and he runs a 4.2 and my safety runs a 4.6 and I got to have that guy cover him? I'm a coordinator. I got to have deep third coverage, man. I got to think about that guy getting open, even if he has marshmallow hands. I got to think about that guy. I got to game plan that guy's speed. When you had the D-Jacks on your team, people weren't afraid of him as a wideout. They were afraid of him as a special teams guy. And once he got in the open, man, you're lucky that guy wasn't naked, because he had clothes on is the only reason you caught him sometimes. Because if he was naked, you would never have caught that guy. People fear D-Jacks because of the speed. Speed scares D coordinators. Catches do nothing. Quez Watkins can be our Deshaun Jackson. Absolutely. Look, even if he sucks catching the passes. Look, the Super Bowl, that was a massive drop. It was a massive drop. Well, don't go there now. Go to Bijan. Go to Bijan Robinson. Throw it to him in the perimeter. You know what a guy like that does? He threatens the top of the defense. Zach Pascal doesn't threaten the top of the defense. So if you get another guy in there, make sure he's got better hands and he's fast, or as fast as him. Because I don't want to give up that dynamic. Because why? It's a situation where he's a decoy. Quez Watkins, as the fourth wideout, is a decoy. You don't throw to decoys. So kind of in the offensive scheme of things, you're throwing across the middle to Quez. That's kind of something Jalen will never do. I guarantee you, Jalen will never do that again late in games. Throw to Quez Watkins across the middle. He will not do that again. He'd throw to a back or someone else. He ain't throwing to him. Quez is a decoy. Hey, watch this. I'd rather have Quez Watkins and Zach Pascal on my team as my third guy. Zach Pascal gives me nothing. Maybe a little bit in the run game more. Okay. Well, that's right. I forgot. You guys don't value the run game. Detroit, too, at 6 could be a place. Why? Dan Campbell likes physicality. I think it's going to be more corner there, though. I think that's where Gonzalez goes. Why? Well, now, what's important? Here. What's important in the NFC North right now? What's important? Think about what's important in the NFC North. What do you have to stop in the NFC North now that Aaron Rodgers is no longer there? Chicago runs the ball. Weren't they second in the NFL in rushing? Okay. Hell, they may have been first. Detroit. Okay. Minnesota. They got Dalvin Cook, at least till tonight. So you got Chicago and Minnesota that run the ball. Okay? I mean, so far, I'm leaning towards Jalen Carter here because they got to stop the run. You feel me? And then you got Green Bay. You're not going to throw the ball a ton with Jordan Davis with Jordan Love. You're going to run it with Aaron Jones. So the 3 things that Detroit has to prepare against, remember, draft your division first, then worry about the conference. Okay? Dalvin Cook, Aaron Jones, and Justin Fields. All 3 of those teams, Chicago, Green Bay, Minnesota, all start off of play action. Jalen Carter's my guy here. So now 2 of your impact guys are gone. 2 of your impact guys are gone. Will Anderson's gone to Arizona. And now your sandbox is getting a little bit smaller for Howie as we're moving down to 10 here. Howie's running out of impact guys. Tyree Wilson's still there. Could he replace Brandon Graham? I told you some of my concerns on him. He lets old linemen get to his knees a little too much. If you watch him on film, they could chop block him. They could get to him. He plays with his head up. Got to be down a little bit more, but better coaching will help that. He's a very talented kid. He's got 2 pass rush moves, long as hell, and he can play the run. And he sets the edge pretty well for a big guy. He's a talented kid. And some of those injuries, again, are from guys getting into his knees. Dude, when you play in the NFL, guys like Jason Kelce will cut that guy, will scoop that guy. If you're not in a position to defend yourself, Jason Kelce would destroy that guy if he doesn't understand coaching. So he's got to get a little bit more coached up, in my opinion. Okay? I think Detroit takes Jalen Carter. Las Vegas. Are you okay with Jimmy Garoppolo, or are you going to go C.J. Stroud here? The Raiders love to throw the ball deep. It's been a mantra of theirs since Al Davis has owned the team. And the McGraths were the partners to Al Davis when Al was the managing general partner. This has always been a mantra. Throw the ball deep. Always been that way. Always will be that way. And to me, if it's not an offensive tackle, to me, it would be a quarterback, and it could be Stroud going here. I'm not as high on Stroud. I don't know if they are. But probably either Stroud or one of the tackles. Vegas needs a corner. Big pick, and Vegas has needed a corner for a decade and a half. Okay? For a decade and a half. They've never been able to get guys on the ground. Jimmy Garoppolo could be a bridge to something, but get this. I think that bridge is in next year's draft, not this year's draft. I think the quarterbacks are better next year. I feel more comfortable with the quarterbacks next year, the kid from UNC, the Southern Cal kid. I think there's better quarterbacks next year than this year. I think these guys, I see a lot of Zach Wilsons. Okay? I see a lot of Zach Wilsons in this draft. Just a lot of Zach Wilsons. Atlanta. Could Atlanta? Again, Detroit with Carter, it's either Carter or Gonzalez. In my opinion. It's Carter or Gonzalez. You got CJ back there in the slot. Gonzalez at the corner. But again, when you play in the NFC North, you got to stop the run. So what makes sense to me? There's not arms in the NFC. I got to stop the run. I got to stop San Francisco. I got to stop the division. Then get this. If you're Detroit, look at what you got to think about if you're Brad Holmes, the general manager. Okay, follow me here. Okay, what do I have to stop? Dalvin Cook, Aaron Jones, Justin Fields in my own division. Then outside of my division and in the conference, I got to stop Jalen Hurts and I got to stop San Francisco. All dominant run teams. Jalen Carter makes sense to me here. I play a corner. What's the corner going to do? Who's he playing against? Kirk Cousins? Dak? I mean, I need to stop the run. I got to stop the run. Chicago. Chicago is a wreck. I mean, their philosophy makes you question where they'll go. I have no idea. I really don't. Because their offseason moves have been pathetic. You get rid of a quality player in Roquan Smith. You turn around and you sign two less than players for more money combined. And you think you won that? Where? How? How did you get better on defense with lesser players? Why? Because you cut it down the middle? You didn't put a value on the linebacker position? Okay, well, you better have the front four the Eagles have. You see, Howie can play the Morrow, the Nakobe Dean game, and the lesser players at linebacker. Why? Because his corners are great and his front seven's great. Howie's got the best defensive line in the NFC East. The Bears don't. The Bears have none of that. So if you're going to be a guy who believes, well, I'll tell you what, we'll cut that $100 million into two players and we'll play two players. Okay, well, who's your front four? The Bears are a wreck in the front four. So you have nothing in the front four there. Now, if Carter's there, would they take him? Yeah, but here, so you take Jalen Carter with question marks, with zero leadership in that Bears organization, and everybody that you've drafted has been a train wreck for the last decade and a half, except for Roquan. I mean, the drafting by the Bears has been atrocious. So you're going to take a problem guy instead of taking something that would help your quarterback. You got to help Justin Fields, man. Help him. Get him a lineman. Get him a I would feel okay if you made – look, if the Bears even got him a wideout, I'd feel okay. You've got to make moves to find out whether or not that kid can play ball for you. It's the only way. I'm going to stop at Chicago and I'm going to come back at Philly. Don't forget, Keith Byers is going to join us. And we're going to start with Philly at 10. We'll recap a little bit here. It's draft day. I'm going to tell you something else, guys. Howie doesn't know what he's doing right now because you know why? He's got to wait and see what people do in front of him. I'm not saying he doesn't have a game plan. He's probably got 7 of them. But he's got to wait and see how it all plays out in front of him. Hit the like.